If I black out, it's because I caught the light in my eye and I had a seizure, so come rescue me. Please resuscitate. I'm too young for that. But before we jump in, can we do like a little bit of a poll so I get a gauge on the room? So how many people in this room have a company with less than 5 employees? Awesome. How many people have a company with more than 5 employees? Cool. How many people are doing less than $1 million a year in top line revenue? Cool. This is why this is what this is all about. How many people are doing more than $1 million a year in top line revenue? Awesome. Good for you. Okay, cool. So crazy statistic, less than 9% of entrepreneurs have MBAs, which I find totally interesting because you think that going to get an MBA would be the place where you probably learn all the skills and knowledge that you need to go and build a company. But funny enough, those people don't go start and build companies. They go get into executive leadership because it's a lot easier to run a company than it is to build something from the ground up. And I have built my career on the back of taking things that are seemingly complex and ethereal and putting them into something that's tangible and digestible for people to leverage, because I was one of those people who did not go get an MBA. In fact, I did a totally illogical thing. I went to school, I got a degree in human physiology, and I walked out on a Friday into a stocks and commodities brokerage. Great job. Terrible idea, but it was actually the best experience that I could ever get because I had to learn by way of experience. So most entrepreneurs learn one of 5 ways on how to be an entrepreneur. Number 1, they're born into a family business. Number 2, they spend 7 to 10 years working in an industry. Number 3, they go bang their head against the wall. Number 4, Brady's over there like, yes, that's me. Number 4, they find a mentorship, or number 5, some combination of all of those things. So I was fortunate enough to be all of those things. That's how I learned. And so when you don't have these cool mental models and frameworks that they teach you at Wharton and Harvard, you come up with your own. So I love analogies, but one of the absolute worst analogies to ever infiltrate its way into the world of business is this concept of water the bamboo. Who's heard this before? Okay, so if you don't know the analogy, I'll explain it to you. Bamboo has a really hard seed, and the seed shell is very challenging to break through. So it takes a really long time for the seedling to percolate, but when it does, it grows in a really rapid fashion. So I plant the seed, I water it, I give it food, sunshine, and for an entire year, nothing happens. Then the second year, I water it, I give it food, sunshine, nothing happens. Third year, I give it food, water, and sunshine, nothing happens. Fourth year, magically, the seedling busts through, and bamboo will grow 60 feet in a single year. So I think that the intentions of that are pure, but they're very misguided. Because when we approach business in that way, it makes it feel like this mystical, magical thing, like one day I'm just gonna finally get this client, I'm gonna finally have the breakthrough, and boom, my business is gonna scale, right? That's not how it works, right? And so, first off, this isn't gardening, okay? You cannot grow a business, and that's the title of today's talk, right? Why 90% of businesses fail to scale, and I chose 90% because less than 10% of businesses will ever make it to 10 years in existence. Most entrepreneurs are just spinning their wheels, right? There's a vast difference between motion, right? I'm moving, and progress, right? And the more we spin our wheels, the deeper the mud gets. And this is what business feels like sometimes, right? So the big question that we're going to try to answer today is, what is the difference between entrepreneurs who successfully build and scale companies and those that give up, quit, fail, or never get started? But before we jump into that, my name is Samson Jagoras. I spent the last 16 years in business and entrepreneurship. I went to the University of Colorado, got a degree in human physiology, thought I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon. My grades pretty much determined for me that was out of the cards. Nonetheless, I wanted to go back to school and do OChem and retake some of those classes. But I met this beautiful woman when I was 20 years old, who's now my wife, and decided that I wanted to go make some money. So I graduated on a Friday, walked into a futures and commodities brokerage on a Monday, And 3 months later, I'm a newly crowned broker, September 29th, 2008, and the Dow Jones falls 777 points in a single day, which sets off the economic housing crisis. I had negative money to my name, so like, hey, this was awesome, you know? So that was my first stint in entrepreneurship. I got baptized in the deep end. I learned a ton about finance, a ton about investing. I'll never forget the first time somebody sent me $500,000 to open an account. I was like, where do you get that much money? This is amazing, right? So I learned and I studied and I modeled, and that's where my brain for strategically thinking about how to do business and investing started. After sleeping with a laptop next to my bed for 3 years, watching the coffee market open at 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning because we were doing managed money, I decided this sucks and I need to go do something else. So I was gonna go be a financial planner because I love finance and I love investing, and I had an opportunity to go build my own business. When I got an opportunity to step into Madwire, where I led strategy for 9 years. So during my time there, I helped build 5 departments. I took us from a handful of employees. We went from a handful of employees to just shy of 600, 2 acquisitions, and at the time I stepped out of the company, we were doing a little over 100 million in revenue. And I got to grow up as an entrepreneur because I didn't have Warden behind me showing me how to think about stuff, right? So at one point in my career, I was hiring 150 people a year. I had no idea how I was gonna do that. Lifetime track record, I think at this point is like north of 400, 450 people that I've been able to hire in my career. So it taught me a lot. But still yet, I decided to step out of that business because I was chasing freedom, right? Ultimately, these beautiful people you see up here, my daughter Delilah on the left and my daughter Kennedy on the right, I wanted more time, right? And so I don't think we get into entrepreneurship or start a business because we want to have a job, and that's the trap, right? Most entrepreneurs struggle to start, buy, build, scale, and ultimately sell their company because they lack clarity and they lack a system. And so I'm on a mission to simplify business ownership, and we have built a portfolio of companies that ultimately serves entrepreneurs at every step of the way so they can start enjoying more freedom of time, money, relationship, and purpose now, and ultimately set themselves up for more exit optionality in the future, right? There's nothing worse than spending 9, 10, 15 years of your life and then one day realize that you didn't actually build an asset, you built a job for yourself that nobody wants to buy. Make sense? Cool. So we took a show of hands at the beginning, right? Less than 4%, there was one person to raise their hand who's doing over $1 million a year in revenue. The statistics say that less than 4% of businesses will ever see $1 million a year in top line revenue. It's crazy, right? I think the even worse statistic is 80% of the businesses that sell in this country sell for less than $1 million, right? And this is the reason why the median income for most business owners is $60,000 a year. I don't know about you, but there are a lot better ways to go make $60,000 a year that are less stressful, less risky, and probably require less hours of work, right? So we gotta go from being interested to being intentional in how we're gonna grow our business. This is what happens to most entrepreneurs is they never fully get off the launch pad when ultimately they wanna get here. So how do you scale revenue so that you can reinvest back in your business and ultimately launch, right? Sadly, most entrepreneurs never get to actually experience business ownership. Rather, their business owns them, right? And I think we can all attest to that, myself included, right? Because I didn't get a fancy Wharton degree, you know? I just learned by getting my butt kicked in the trenches like all of us do. Anybody can start a business, right? There's lots of people walking around saying they're founders, right? Right? I just bought my domain. And I know this well because our target customer when I was at Madwire was small to medium-sized business. We had 25,000 accounts, right? And so people would come to us thinking that we're going to solve their problem by way of marketing, right?
No. Yes.
Right? And that's a short-term solution to a long-term problem because if I can send you leads and you can't close them or service them, or you don't know how to package up your product, you don't know how to build a guarantee, good luck. There's nothing I can do to actually help you, right? So this is what we end up doing when we think about business, right? Anybody can start a business. One day I'm going to find that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right? So I'm going to give you the straight cash today. I have always said that this is one of my fancy little acronyms that I came up with. This is my ways to think about how do you build confidence and competence as an entrepreneur. You need knowledge and you need experience. But it's an interesting dichotomy because you can't get experience until you get out there and do it, right? So realistically, when in the absence of experience, you need to better understand the attitudes, the skills, and the habits that successful entrepreneurs, those that figure out how to build a company, do and think that you don't think about. The vast majority of people that start companies in this country are not entrepreneurs. They are technicians. Who's read the book, The E-Myth? Okay, if you have not read it, put it on your reading list. The vast majority of people who start companies are not entrepreneurs. They are technicians. They're very good at their respective craft. They're good at building things, electrical work, photography, yada, 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 right? An entrepreneur is a technician of business, and that's the difference. So most of us are walking around, we have an identity crisis. We're actually not sure who we are and how we fit into the ecosystem. And so we have to get properly rooted in what is our place in our company in order to make it successful and ultimately scalable, right? That's the difference. So how do you go from being a solopreneur to a business owner? We already said that that's the difference, right? So solopreneurship, I know that very well. I have a father who is an incredible, incredible craftsman. He can build anything. He, multiple times throughout his career, decided, I don't want to work for anybody. I'm going to go start my own business. Do you know what the number one reason cited for starting a business is by small to medium-sized business owners? What did you say?
Be their own boss.
They want to be their own boss.
Go their own time.
Yeah, but be their own boss. Well, what the heck does that even mean, right? Be their own boss. So my father, unfortunately, was never able to scale his business beyond being an army of one. And he was such a craftsman that he had railroad track thinking, right? Oh my gosh, project's done. Uh-oh, how do I make money? So he'd scramble for the next 2 or 3 months until he find that next big job and then put his head down and go do it. So that ain't it, right? Then you kind of grow up into being an entrepreneur, and that you start to think a little bit more about how to build people, processes, and systems. But most people get stuck here, right? They never actually evolve being the lead actor in their own play with a strong supporting cast. So that ain't it either. Business builders own assets. They own self-managing companies that can ultimately operate without them. I always called it the get hit by a bus theory. Could I get hit by a bus tomorrow? It's kind of gruesome, now that I say it out loud. It sounded better in my head. But could I get hit by a bus tomorrow and the business would still function and run without me? Because I am not the business. Make sense? So the problem is everybody's playing checkers and we should actually be playing chess. How many people play chess in here? Cool, so there's also half of this room that doesn't understand how any of these pieces work. And if you try to play it like checkers, you're gonna lose, right? You'll get disqualified, right? So if you don't understand that the knight can move 2 up, 1 over, or that the castle can move in as many spaces as it wants, vertically or horizontally, but it can't move diagonally, right? Or what castling is, or the fact that you can move a pawn 2 spaces, right, to start your move, but you can only take another player out by moving diagonally, it'd be pretty hard to play the game, right? So ultimately what I want you to do is I want you to change your mindset. Okay, you are a business builder. You're not growing anything, right? Plus it's hard to tend a garden that doesn't exist, right? You're a business builder. And you're building a company throughout this business life cycle. Who knows what the business life cycle chart looks like? How many people have seen this before? Some have, some haven't, right? So you're trying to go from a startup to a grow up to an expansion to a mature company. Maturity is when you actually achieve business ownership. What does that look like? How do I know when I've actually arrived? There are 8 core concepts in every single business. So these are the raw materials that you need to understand if you're going to build a successful, scalable company. They are leadership, finance, operations, growth, product, service, sales, and marketing. And funny enough, all those people that go get those fancy MBAs are typically going into C-level positions at large organizations that have a chief executive officer, a chief financial officer, a chief operations officer, a chief growth officer, a chief product officer, a chief customer service officer, a chief sales officer, a chief marketing officer, right? So, how do those look and function within our organization? So we're building something, right? So starting at the top, you have leadership. Leadership is the most important. What does leadership entail? That includes mission, vision, values, and communication throughout your organization. At the very bottom of this pyramid, you have marketing. It's the broadest, and it's the most comprehensive, because it inherently has every single layer above it embodied in it. There's a concept in software engineering called the law of inheritance. And it implies that the highest most line of code is the most important. And every line of code that falls underneath that top line of code inherently has the attributes of the line of code above it. Does that make sense? So marketing is the most comprehensive because it includes sales, it includes service, it includes product, it includes growth, it includes operations, finance, and leadership. This is why you see so many chief marketing people moving to the top of organizations, right? This is why you see so many marketing people like myself who are going on to be entrepreneurs, because it's innately a part of our job title to be good at all of these things, right? I cannot be a good marketer if I don't understand how the sale is going down, if I don't understand how a client is going to be serviced, if I don't understand the actual product itself and what our guarantee or promise to the customer is going to be, right? And if I don't understand what the unit economics need to be on that, and ultimately how that ties in with the North Star vision, I cannot be a good marketer. You guys tracking me? Cool. So that's somewhat helpful to you, but it still doesn't make it clear. So I tried to sum it up a little bit more. Across those 8 core concepts, you have 3 different core pillars. You have, as the entrepreneur, you're trying to solve for foundational things, structural things, and functional things. Right? So if we're talking about building a house, what's the very first thing I have to do? I have to dig a big ass hole to pour a bunch of concrete in it, right? It's the beginnings of a house, but can I live in it? No, but if I don't do it, what happens? Correct. Then structurally, right, I have to build the framing, right? I have to frame up the house and the walls and the roof and the doors. But is that house very functional? Does it satisfy the need? No, right? It doesn't protect me from the elements. Then I have to put up walls and insulation, right? I have to actually hook up the power and the water, right? Those are functional things. So to scale, we're climbing up or over something, right? It's not magic. And the foundational things, most importantly, the number one mistake that I made in my own career, and I see for entrepreneurs that I consult, companies that I advise for, is they are unclear on where the heck they're actually going. If I were to ask you guys right now, do you want to go on a trip? Jump in the car, let's go. What's the first question you're going to ask me?
Where are you going?
Crazy, right? Where are we going? And guess who wants to know that? Your employees, right? Your mission, vision, and values, using the law of inheritance, dictate how you think about your finances, right? Foundationally, revenue and expenses, profit, capital, right? They dictate the type of company I form. They dictate the type of risk that I take. Insurance. They dictate reinvestment, how we reinvest into the business. Anticipating and developing a point of view. Research and development, product design. Fixing what goes wrong, our guarantee, our promise to our customers. Sales, revenue. Brand, reach, content, right? If I don't know where I'm going and I don't know who I serve, how am I ever supposed to be able to build a product that would meet them where they're at, right? Because if you serve everyone, you serve no one. Okay, so structurally, communication, right? How does information flow throughout the organization? How do we think about assets, liabilities, taxes? And most importantly, As a business builder, not a business grower, as the entrepreneur who's a business builder, structurally, the most important part of your business is going to be built around operations. People, processes, systems, and measurement. Guys, I just heard a great talk. Who was here for the last talk? Okay, great. That's everything that Charles talked about, right? Predictability in your business. Innovation. So how are we thinking about, optimizing our business day in and day out as we're building it, right? If I'm building a wall and something breaks, I have to fix it, right? Structurally. Quality control, relationship. We don't have a business if we don't have customers. Our method of sale, our sales model, our team, and ultimately channels. Where do we go find these people? Where do they exist at? Okay, so functionally, leadership's all about creating the culture in which the business can thrive. Finance is about ensuring sustainability in the business. Operations is about minimizing risk in the business. Growth is about optimizing the business. Product is about producing a predictable unit of value. If I'm going too fast, don't worry. I'm going to give you a call to action at the end that you're all going to want to do, and I will send you these notes. Maximizing customer satisfaction, that's service functionally. Generate revenue, generate demand. So functionally, do you know what makes a heater in your home or your AC so functional? The thermostat, right? So your business is like a thermostat, right? You're constantly, it's too hot, better turn up the AC. It's too cold, I better turn up the heat, right? That process never ends throughout our business. This is why predictability is so important, why processes and systems are so important, because it's very hard to optimize something where everybody does it differently. Cool. Okay, so those are the raw materials. That's what you need to build your business. Now ultimately, we got to figure out who you are. So I went on LinkedIn and I pulled up this job description for a chief executive officer role. So I think that this is how we generally think about ourselves when we're running our business. It's our business, we're running the show. We're the president of operations, general management, right? You can't be the CEO of a company if you're still working in the business day in and day out. Your job description actually looks like this. Pay $0. You might make $60,000. Must be willing to work 50 plus hours a week minimum. Must be okay with taking risks. High levels of stress, sleepless nights. Must like finance, sales, marketing, product development, customer service, hiring, and recruiting. And that last part is incredibly important. The number of times I talk to entrepreneurs who say things like, I'm just not good at that. It's just not really my style. It's not my thing, You should probably not be at the Scale Up conference if that's your mindset. Because it has to be. Not being good at those things is not an option anymore, right? Especially if you're going to build a company. Because when you do that, you are basically signaling to the world that I take responsibility for my actions and every single person who's entrusting their time to me. And so if I don't get good at these things, I'm going to let everybody else around me down. Because guess what? 80% of businesses fail in the first 2 years. And of those that make it past the first 2 years, 80% of those fail in the next 2 years, right? It's freaking hard what we're doing, right? So we have to be more tactical. This is what your job responsibilities actually look like. On the left-hand side, you're seeing a job description from LinkedIn. You can't read it, don't worry, it's just your eyes are going to glaze over. This is a chief marketing officer. This is a chief sales officer. This is a chief operations officer. This is a chief growth officer. This is the CEO. Oh, and might I mention, you also have to be responsible for bringing in new customers, closing new business, right? So this is what actually being a founder looks like. You're like the dude from M. Night Shyamalan's movie Split, right? You just wear multiple hats and you have multiple personalities. And so what are those personalities? Essentially, you're the technician or the worker bee. You're the COO, you're the CGO, the chief growth officer. You're the CEO and the business owner. The only thing that you're entitled to as a business owner are profits. So this is a weird dichotomy, but you are an employee of a company that you just so happen to own. So stop doing typical small business owner things like, well, it's my company, so I get to. That's not going to work. That doesn't fly. You have to be able to separate yourself from the business itself, and you're an employee of your own company. Then you're the CEO, right? You're responsible for all those foundational things. You're responsible for keeping it on the rails. You're the COO, right? You're responsible for documenting and building processes and systems. You're the CGO. You're responsible for constantly optimizing what's happening throughout the business. You're the worker bee and the technician. So essentially, here's your job description. You are a professional problem solver. And what problems are you looking to solve? Anybody guess? All the problems across the 8 core concepts of business. Right? So I can't tell you how many entrepreneurs I work with, and myself included, until I really got my head wrapped around the stuff, just brush the issues that crop up in their business under the rug because they're not good at them. I don't think it's intentional. I just think it's because we don't know what we're looking for. Right? It would be very hard to solve problems if you weren't thinking, hey, what are the cultural problems we're having within our organization? Hey, what are the financial problems we're having? I just had a conversation with a guy last week who had tremendous success out of the gate. Typical technician, was incredible at sales, was selling his butt off, had tons of new revenue coming in, was doing everything in his power to make deals and close them, and never stopped to look at the numbers and go, oh crap, we're not actually making money on these deals. And then all of a sudden he had 20 guys working for him, and he had to say, hey, I'm using too much credit card debt to bridge the gap, and so I'm gonna have to close the business down, right? So being an entrepreneur comes with great responsibility, right? And these are the issues that you're looking for in your business day in and day out. And how do you do that? You solve the foundational problems in your company and the structural problems, right? So there are no I'm not giving you any silver bullets here. I'm just giving you mental models and frameworks to think about how you should be working on your business. Don't get trapped working in your business, right? Entrepreneurship is weird in that every single day you're doing everything in your power to replace yourself, right? So I've actually designed this business lifecycle chart to run alongside the different roles and functions that I just gave you. Because you're trying to climb your own corporate ladder. And it's weird, it's a weird thought, right? Because what I just gave you were, 4, 5, 6 different major job descriptions. That would be hard for one person to do, let alone, that would be hard for multiple people to do, let alone one person to do. So it's not magic. How do you go from here to here? That happened a little fast there. Your biggest problem is not revenue. Your biggest problem is time. Time is money. Who's heard that before? Cool. So when you're a startup, this is kind of what your time allocation should and probably would look like. This is not perfect science here. This is just me trying to give you a model to think about in your head. Your time allocation, right? If you have 50, 60 hours in a week, obviously you need to be focused on getting new revenue and generating new business. You're the sole salesperson and marketing person in the organization. But while you're doing that, you should also be doing COO things. It's like, hey, how do we actually generate new business? What is our sales process? Why? Because in order to move from a startup into a growth type of company, it's really going to be determined by your allocation of time. And the only way to replace yourself is to hire people. Does that make sense? Tracking me? So I can always tell how successful a business is and where they're at in the life cycle based off of where they're allocating their time. A lot of people will try to classify this chart of, oh, you're a growth company or you're a scale up or whatever by revenue. It has nothing to do with revenue. And it's not a good indicator because if I'm comparing a boutique gym, one of the businesses that I own that's going to do like 1.2 million, and I have 16 people in a 6,000 square foot gym, and I have an average ticket of $950 a month, that's a more mature type of company compared to a contracting company that's doing 2.5 million, right? That 2.5 million is full of all their customer costs that they're running through their business, right? So it really doesn't tell me anything about functionally how the business is doing. Does that make sense? So the entrepreneur's time allocation is usually the biggest indicator of where our problems actually exist and where we'll go step in as a consultant to try to solve the bottleneck. Because as the entrepreneur, as the business builder, you're the biggest asset and you're also the biggest risk. And until you get to the point where the business can run without you, you don't own anything. You own a job. So this is where most entrepreneurs get trapped. They become the lead actor in their own play with a really strong supporting cast. I know countless real estate brokers, insurance professionals, those types of businesses that are doing well over $1 million a year in revenue, and they have a really strong supporting cast, but if something happened to them, they would not have a business anymore. It's not an asset that could then be heired to their significant other. It's not something that could be sold. It would just cease to exist. So how do I go from being a growth company to a more expansion company? And how do you know that you're ready to scale up, right? This is the point when you're ready to quote unquote scale. When you're no longer spending your days working in the business and you're spending all your time working on the business. You have duplicatable, repeatable systems and processes that allow you to focus on the business and leverage the most important resource that we have, which is other people's time. Do you know how I'm able, at the gym that I don't do anything in, the private training facility, we have 12 trainers. They all work 40 hours a week. So it's 10x the amount of time that I could ever work as an individual person. That's the power of people, processes, and systems, and being able to leverage your knowledge into some sort of duplicatable and repeatable fashion. And then how do you go from expansion to mature? Oh, sorry, real quick. This is when you get to start to experience some of those benefits of business ownership, like, hey, I'm taking profits out of the business for work that I didn't necessarily do, right? That's a pretty cool feeling. When you cross over here, now you're moving up to higher levels within the organization. So the key takeaway here is, in order to scale up, you have to delegate in order to elevate. With me? Cool. So what are your biggest hurdles and roadblocks? The path to scaling. There's a great book called The Obstacle is the Way, right? And so what are the biggest obstacles on your way to actually scaling your company? Number one, to get off the tarmac, you gotta have talent. If you cannot and figure out how to hire talent, invest in talent, you're going to struggle. And this is why it's imperative, as somebody who made all the mistakes as it relates to hiring. So you guys want to know how I became the director of recruiting and hiring and training? It's because we sat in a meeting, we said, we're gonna hire 60 people. And I walked out of that meeting like, how the heck are we gonna train these people? And I went and just built some really crude, antiquated training process, but at least it was something, because I could see that if we couldn't duplicate and repeat the process, that not only were we gonna hire a bunch of people, but we were also gonna end up firing a bunch of people. And people would come into our organization and they would constantly flounder. And then we make up really dumb excuses for ourselves instead of taking extreme ownership over it of like, they just didn't get it. Yeah, they were a great interviewer, they had a great resume. Well, how is anybody supposed to be successful in your organization if you don't give them the playbook? It's the same thing that I'm trying to give you right now. We have to be building the playbook, because knowledge plus experience equals confidence and competence. And in the absence of experience and working in your organization, what do they need to know? The knowledge, attitude, skills, and habits on how to execute well at their position. You built it, now tell them how to do it. Processes and systems are how we get to altitude. I feel like I'm beating that dead horse, but it is so imperative. That book, The E-Myth, if you haven't read it, talks about that. It's effectively, you're trying to franchise your business. Once you get there, then you can start to think about speed. I heard Charles at the end there was talking about focus on predictability, right? Over speed, right? Go slow to go fast. You're going slow to build processes and systems that afford you the ability to delegate in order to elevate. So revenue is not your problem, right? You can make enough revenue to then hire somebody and pay somebody to do that job. Now you want them to be successful. This is an investment. You're building an asset, right? So you need to think about it that way. Then you can start to move on optimizing your margins, right? So we worry way too much about margins early on in the early days. Obviously you need to be making money, but every single dollar that you should be making should be going reinvesting back into the business. This is the number one thing that stops people from hiring salespeople, is because they cannot figure out how to structure a commission structure. Salespeople love commission. They love making lots and lots of money, and you have to build a system that allows them to do that. So you're going to give up margin early days in order to get the speed that you need. That was a rhyme. I'm a poet and I didn't know it. Right? And then you can get to scale, right? When you actually get to the point where you have duplicatable people, processes, and systems, right? And you have those commission structures and those models all built in, now all of a sudden you can duplicate what you're doing and scale, right? So this is why I say you can't grow a business. You build a business. And ultimately, the ultimate pinnacle of business ownership is to move out of the driver's seat, of the pilot seat, and then move more into like air traffic control. And when you have a company like that is self-managing, you now have options. So we're not building companies with the end in mind. What is the end? The end is what I call exit optionality. That doesn't mean exit as in sell, which is one of the possibilities. It could be, I want to go acquire more companies. It could be that I just want to hire a CEO and I want to cash flow the business, right? Because this is an asset. It could be, I want to franchise. It could be, I want to license my model to somebody else. Pretty hard to license, pretty hard to franchise, pretty hard to cash flow, pretty hard to go acquire more businesses if you haven't even done it yourself. And you can't document it and tell somebody else how you're going to do it. So I'll sum it up in a real fancy little acronym that'll take home the bullet points. So the painful way to building a company is you put money first. So I told you at the beginning, there's 4 freedoms that every entrepreneur is chasing. Freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom of relationship, and freedom of purpose. You cannot get freedom of time before you get, freedom of money before you get freedom of time. If you do, guess what? You have a job. That's what employees are doing, is they're sacrificing their time for money, right? So you have to be, as the entrepreneur, reinvesting dollars to get back your time, which then results in you getting more money. The next fatal mistake is assuming that your skills as a technician of your specific craft is going to equal to business success. I just gave you the 8 core concepts. You're going to have to go get the experience and you're going to have to learn that in order to be successful. But at least it's a start. Now you have a framework to go figure out what your weak points are. Interested and not intentional, right? People who are trying to grow businesses, they're just interested. I have a side hustle. I kind of do this thing. It's like, no, be intentional. You can't be interested if you're building a house, right? You have to be very intentional. There's a specific blueprint that you're trying to follow. And then obviously, fatal mistake, not investing in sales and marketing by way of people or companies to help you do that. The profitable way to grow a business, how to go to from pain to profits, is to prioritize time freedom before money freedom. Focus on relentlessly optimizing across the 8 core concepts. Remain optimistically grounded. Focus on the vision, intentionally investing back into the business, and training your team to operate without you. And then ultimately spend your days thinking about revenue and margin. But you can't run a company until you've actually built it first. So some of you might be feeling a little demoralized right now. That's not my intention. Because all of this stuff, I didn't know this from day one. It is learnable. It is a skill. It's going to require you to do that. So, what are the intangible qualities that every entrepreneur shares that ultimately makes them successful? They're humble. They're coachable. They're hungry. They're smart. They're gritty. They're competitive. They have extreme personal accountability. And they're very comfortable with risk. So don't be disheartened. If you feel that you carry these qualities, you will find success as an entrepreneur. So we're in where we started. I think I've made it clear. You cannot grow a business. Rather, you build people, processes, and systems, and the business will scale itself. If you guys want that entire talk, you want my personal job description on I'm a marketer and a salesperson. You see this right here? This is my pitch. And you want the pitch deck as well as I've actually written job descriptions on how I think about my function as a CEO, my function as the CGO, my function as the COO. I'm happy to share that with you. I'll also include my entire, what I call the entrepreneurial MBA. So I've read countless books over the years, and the problem with books is they lack context. So I've actually organized all those books across the 8 core concepts as here's the best leadership books that have influenced me, here's the best marketing books that have influenced me, the best operational books, so on and so forth, and I'll share that with you as well. I'll also add you to our email list. Every single week I write a newsletter called Street Smarts. It goes out every single Tuesday with the whole goal of helping you save time and level up across those 8 core concepts. So you're going to see leadership, finance, growth, operations, product, service, sales, and marketing. And even better, but wait, there's more. I will give you if you email me personally, I will send you this document, I will add you to the free newsletter, and then I'll give you a free 30-day of our premium service. So we run a premium newsletter for literally less than probably what you spend on coffee every single month. We send out an email every single day. It's like a daily devotional for entrepreneurs that covers more on economics, more on brand, more on what's changing from sales and marketing, mindset and performance. And then we send out a weekender email. I promise you that nobody in this room consumes more content than me and my partner right there, Darius, because that's literally the game that we're in. We also host 3 major events a year. The Leadership Summit coming up in the second quarter. In the second quarter, we'll have the Sales and Marketing Summit. And then ETA, that's going to be our Entrepreneurship Through Acquisition Summit. So guys, we are standing at the greatest wealth transfer in history. $7 trillion is going to transfer from the baby boomer generation to the next generation of entrepreneurs. And so if what you just heard maybe sounds a little stressful, like building a company from the ground up, it might make more sense to actually buy one and step into cash flow and then leverage the skill sets and knowledge that you have to take it to the next level. So that marketplace is fragmented and it's currently a black hole. People don't know how to actually buy a company because nobody wants to represent buyers. Everybody wants to represent the sellers, right? So we're building a piece of tech that will ultimately help buyers at a scale of 1,000 to 1 get pre-approved, connect with financing, basically validate who they are and qualify, and then connect them with brokers who have listings and get you all the information that you need. And we're bringing, I'm a marketer, clarity to the business acquisition marketplace. If you are an entrepreneur and you're looking to scale by way of acquisition, we have a private equity group, and we're investing in entrepreneurs either who need growth stage funding and or who are looking to scale by way of acquiring other companies. So we'd love to talk to you. Thanks, that's my time.